Welcome to the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. I'm your host, Deb Maisner. I'm a registered nurse, health coach, and alcohol-free badass. I have found that there's more than one way to address drinking. If you've ever asked yourself if drinking is taking more than it's giving, or if you've found that you're drinking more than usual, you may have reached your own alcohol tipping point. The Alcohol Tipping Point is a podcast for you to find tips, tools, and thoughts to change your drinking. Whether you're ready to quit forever or a week, this is the place for you. You are not stuck and you can change. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode. I am just thrilled to have Toni Will with us. Toni has been the general manager and governor of the Kalamazoo Wings, a men's professional hockey team in Michigan. She's been doing that for over a decade. She made history as the first female GM on the East Coast Hockey League Board of Governors. Way to go! In 2020, Toni founded Mindfulness Elevated to help others achieve freedom from substances and reach their fitness and nutrition goals. By 2023, she expanded her business to include professional development coaching through Toni Will Coaching. Passionate about empowering emerging leaders and entrepreneurs, Toni launched the Women In podcast in 2024, celebrating women from all walks of life and the people who support them. I was honored to be on her show, so thank you, Toni. It was just a great interview. I'm excited for that to come out, which it will already be out by the time you listen to this, so I'll make sure to link to that in our show notes. Toni lives in Kalamazoo with her husband Josh and their three young children, Grace, Landon, and Chloe. Welcome to the show, Toni.
Hello, Deb. This is so exciting. You're so calming too. I need some of your calming energy.
It's the tea. It's all this tea I'm drinking. It's
I feel
all in
like
the tea.
I'm always bouncing off the walls and I'm like,
Well, I'm so glad you're here. As I was telling you earlier, I was working on your intro and I was like, okay, I gotta hear how you ended up in hockey. So can we start there?
we can. And it is an interesting story because I did not intend to be in sports. So growing up, I was like a recreational athlete. I was a gymnast and a cheerleader, and I like to remind everyone that yes, cheerleading is a sport. And then in my 20s and 30s, I was an endurance athlete. So I was a marathon runner. I did triathlons of varying distances. And I went to college. I got my degree in business, but I never ever thought in a million years I would be running a men's professional hockey team. The short answer is it was on accident, but I'll give a little bit more detailed response, which is I was running the Chamber of Commerce here in Kalamazoo, and I loved what I did externally out in the community because I'm born and raised here. I loved it, loved it, loved it, but I didn't love the culture internally. And so I decided to leave in my mid 30s with a mortgage and three kids, and Rebel Tony was in full effect. And I just was like, I want to find somewhere where my core values align with the organization I'm working for. And so it took me about 4 months and I actually wanted less responsibility. So I applied for a job in a high end fashion boutique in Kalamazoo called Sydney. And I used to shop there only on sale. And I'm like, this is great. Because I've always kind of liked fashion and, clothes and stuff like that. And I was like, this will be great. It's something new. I haven't done this before. I'll have less responsibility. I'll have less things to worry about. And they said, Toni, we think you'll get bored. And I said, I know. And I want to be bored. And HR was like, we have something else for you in mind. And I said, what's that? So the Greenleaf Hospitality Group they own a hotel, retail, restaurants, and a professional hockey team. And they said, what do you think about the Kalamazoo Wings? And I'd come to a few games when I was growing up and I said, the hockey team? And she goes, yeah. And I said, it's still around? And she goes, well, that's the problem. And we'd like you to come in and help turn it around. And this is literally what I said. I said, I don't know shit about hockey. And she goes, no, that's okay. We don't want someone that knows hockey. We want someone that knows how to sell, that can lead a strong, effective culture and loves Kalamazoo and knows how to run a business. And so now I'd already left my job, but I took a 35% pay cut and I said yes. because one of my beliefs always, and I teach my kids this, they're all young adults now, but I never follow the money because if I'm passionate about something, the money will follow, is my belief. And so I said yes to the best job I never knew I wanted. And here we are 10 years later.
Oh my gosh, that's so maybe I mean, like, we need to make our own little Ted Lasso show about you in this hockey league and just, like, how you have lifted it up and just making headways as a woman and that wow, wow, what an interesting story. I'm so glad you
Well,
shared that.
and it's funny too, 'cause I had no idea what I was walking into, not just the sport, but I didn't walk in here 10 years ago and, like, kick down the door and light my bra on fire and whiz it around and be like, "Woman, hear me roar." I didn't even know. Like, I had no eyes on this. It took me about 2 or 3 years before when I was in the board of governors. So and just to back up, a board of governors is like a board of directors, but in sports, we're called governors. And I'm like, "Oh my god, it's just all these white men everywhere." And then there's Tony, and I was like, I got some work to do here." And so began my quest.
Wow, wow, okay. Now, where did drinking come into all of this? Like, you grew up in Michigan, you're born and raised in
Yeah,
Kalamazoo,
yeah, I never left.
which is, like, the best name for a city ever.
Isn't it great? Yeah, it's in Southwest Michigan. It is right smack dab in between Detroit and Chicago on I-94. And so for people that have been up here, like it is, the stop through. And that's why Wings Event Center kind of exists because there were shows. We were built in 1974. We're 50 years old this year. And, the shows would come from Detroit, stop in Kalamazoo on like a weekday and then go into Chicago. And so it's just this beautiful spot in Southwest Michigan surrounded by water. It's awesome. So I
Mm,
never left.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, take us through what your experience was with drinking, how it started, how you unraveled it, all that. I love hearing people's stories.
So my drinking story is actually I don't know if it's unique, I doubt it, but, you hear varying, when it started. I'll tell you the first time I drank, like, one of my first memories of drinking was I was a senior in high school, and I was at my friend's house, and right before we went to my friend's house, for whatever reason, I wanted a Whopper Junior, so we whipped through I'm 17, so of course, Whopper Junior is probably what I lived on, and so we will get a Whopper Junior, we go to her house, and I'm sitting on her basement step, and all my friends in high school so I graduated high school in 1996, and back then, a lot of my friends smoked Marlboro Reds or they smoked cigarettes. And I just didn't like cigarettes, but I'm like, "Man, I felt kinda left out." So I'll get to the alcohol part here in a minute, but so my one friend handed me a Zima. Do you remember Zimas?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hands me a Zima. So I take a drink of the Zima, and then I'm like, "Oh, I want a cigarette because I really wanted to be like all my friends and smoke. And I took a drag off this Marlboro Red, and then up came the Whopper Junior. That was one of my first, like, right on the floor between my feet. I mean, talk about an indicator, like, "Hello, your body's rejecting all these things," right? And and then I and so I did drank once in high school. College, I didn't drink much, just, like, maybe a little bit socially, but nothing remarkable because I was working. I was going to school, like, I was very goal-oriented, career-oriented. It wasn't until I turned 29 where things started to really kinda it moved from social to coping. And what happened that year was 2008, and I was going through a divorce. I was married at that point for about 7 years. I married my college sweetheart. We had 2 kids at the time, 4 and 1, and I just wasn't happy in he wanted to have more children, I didn't. I was very career focused. He wanted someone that wanted to stay at home. It's the core values. It goes back to core values. They just didn't match, and we were at the time, I wasn't wise enough to, like, have that, you know, forethought, and so we ended up, splitting up in 2008, and that's when my drinking went over into problem drinking. Now, that was what, 18 years ago, or however many years ago it's been? No, Chloe's 17, so 15 years ago. I see it clearly now. It took me until I was about 41-ish before I figured that out. Because for me, it was really important, but then the drinking went I had the kids 1 week on, 1 week off, and so it was work hard, play hard, and it was layered all during the time where I was doing endurance sports. So in that culture of, like, Ironman races, work hard, play hard. So I would do these really hard triathlons, long distances, and it's like, well, I've earned it. I've earned the drink, or I've earned the binge, or I've earned that. And yeah, it just from bottles to boxes to blackouts. I mean, it was really I had a lot of cognitive dissonance. So really my mid 8 years ago, I I was like, I think I have a problem. And I went to AA for 15 months. And I liked if I mean, you put me in a room of people, I'm gonna make the best of it, like, I'm gonna make friends, and then, of course, I'm gonna run something because that's what I do. I'm a natural born leader. I'm gonna lead meetings and chair things and be on the board, and I did all the things. But around 1 year, I started to have those thoughts like, "Man, this wasn't that hard to stop drinking. Surely I can moderate." And I had those thoughts for about 3 months, and then at 15 months sober, I went back out. And in that methodology, it's like all or nothing, right? So I went back out for 3 years, and man, was I sick and tired of being sick and tired. And in October 2020, I was like, I just so hockey at that point, normally in October, we're launching. Like today, we're having a preseason game, and we play for the next 6, 7 months. And so, but that year in Michigan, we couldn't gather indoors, so we did not play hockey. So I took that time. I said, okay, I can focus on me. I was still working, but from home. I didn't have to travel. I didn't have to do all this stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to take a 30-day break from alcohol. But I wanted to find a more modern methodology. And that's what I literally typed into the Google search bar. And this naked mind came up. And I thought, well, let me try it. And now this is a gross oversimplification, but tomorrow I will be 4 years alcohol free. And that's where it started.
Oh my
The,
gosh,
the new
we
time.
caught wow, yeah, yeah, congratulations on 4 years. What good
Thank
timing for this interview.
thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's hard. Like I mentioned, I did an Ironman. I've done 2 Ironman triathlons, and those are hard. Those are hard. Quitting drinking, hard, but so worth it. Just taking this one thing out, and I can't imagine going back, and I loved it so much, and you read it in my intro. I got certified as a senior coach with This Naked Mind. I launched a coaching business that's been very successful, so I do both my jobs, and I love it, I've met the coolest people, you included. I just I love this world. I love that there are those of us that are forward thinking and just badasses, and we're like, "We're gonna we're gonna take the shame and stigma and stereotype out of this."
Mhm. Yeah. What do you think was different? Like, what stood out to you? Because you were successful with AA.
Mhm.
So what were can you just kinda highlight the differences between using that method versus this naked mind and, what was different, what was helpful? Because I'm sure there were also things that were helpful in AA also, but yeah, like,
Yes.
you have a unique perspective that
Yeah.
you've done the AA route and you've also done the modern what did you say you put in your Google search?
What did I put in there? I typed it I gotta look at my TED Talk because 'cause I'm saying this in 2 weeks when I give this TED Talk. I typed in "other methodologies to stop drinking besides AA."
Love it. Yeah, because that's what people are looking for, and yeah. So can you share about, like, kinda compare and contrast the differences for you?
So the thing that I loved about AA, and this is one of my leadership pillars, is to innovate. I love to the community part of AA, like the people. And I'm still friends with these people, to this day. I don't go to meetings or anything, but on social media, we're still friends. We still support each other. So the people, it made me feel like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one in the world with this problem," because I felt like that. So that part I loved, and it's very similar to This Naked Mind. There's just community. Step 1, admitting you are powerless over alcohol. That's where I mean, I couldn't get past step 1. I am someone that believes in empowerment and in choices. And I believe that I have the ability to change, and I'm not hopeless in any part of my life. And so I wanted to have that control, right? I wanted to take my power back. So that step 1 in AA just didn't work for me because I'm like, "No, that's bullshit." So I believe that I am powered. Here's the other thing that's really different for me is the language. So alcoholic and alcoholism is not recognized by the CDC. The correct terminology is alcohol use disorder, which I know you know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know. But these 2 words that really changed everything for me were alcohol free because it became a choice. I choose this. It didn't choose me. I chose it. Just like and I liken this to being a vegetarian. Right now, I'm a pescatarian. I kinda go back and forth between vegetarian, pescatarian, but I didn't stop eating red meat or poultry because I was, addicted. I wasn't a meataholic, right? So, it's a choice to be vegetarian or pescatarian or vegan. Sometimes I dabble in that. I liked the idea of not everything is black and white. There's a spectrum to this, and it's up to me how to go about it. And I'm a rebel, and I need to know that I can color outside the lines if I want. So a lot more differences than similarities. The community piece is the biggest piece that I find similar. The other thing I will say is what I didn't like about AA is the 100-year-old framework. It is very man-centric. And I would say I'm a feminist. I don't generally wear that label, but I'm all about equality, and equality is men and women. So I feel like we need to it's not just like, oh, here's some ladies that drank too much because back then it was like it was really looked down upon. Like the husband did the over drinking, the wife should be like, in the kitchen and all that bullshit. So I don't like the old like if you I've read the big book cover to cover and I'm like, what the like I can't believe it's never been like someone hasn't stepped up and said, what, why don't we modernize this? But they haven't. So that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's interesting, but I agree with you on the language is so important, and coming from a place of choosing the
Yeah.
freedom, the empowerment, taking responsibility and then finding the power from that, makes such a huge difference, and letting go of the shame part of it.
100%. And that was really hard for me. I had to so I love loopholes. Tony loves a good loophole. So if I don't close these in specific to alcohol, I will find a way. I'll crawl through a loophole. So one of my loopholes I closed was what I call macro manage, which is basically letting go of control. Again, it's about empowerment and autonomy. And so on day 80 of being alcohol free, I posted to social media. So this was at the very end of 2020. And I'm just like, I wrote this thing out and I said to my husband, I said, Josh, will you read this? Because I'm gonna lift the kimono, but I'm gonna do it in a way where I'm not, I'm framing it. It's my words, but I'm gonna talk about how I haven't drank in 80 days. And if I was so scared of the judgment, and putting myself out there, but I wanted so badly for people because I noted, and as you did in 2020, people were drinking more and more and more. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm sure there are people who aren't comfortable with the level of drinking they're doing because of how scary it was for all of us back then. And I'm gonna go the opposite way, shocker, 'cause I'm a rebel. And so I decided to put my story out there and let go of control, and it closed a loophole. Because the more I talked about it and put it
Mhm.
out there, I wouldn't walk backwards on it. Likely wouldn't walk backwards on it and undo the promises to myself, but I also could help other people who felt the same way, or maybe had stopped drinking and I didn't know about, and there were lots of those that came out of the woodworks too. It was great. It was scary, but it was just one way for me to know because I knew I didn't wanna go back there, but this is not an easy journey, not a culture like ours where it's very pro alcohol.
Well, I mean, you're a really public person in, this community. You've grown up all your life, like, to put yourself out there, that was really brave. What was the response? What was that like?
It was very supportive, but I knew that. Like, so this is what I did. I hit publish and then I'm like, my way of coping is working out. So I walked down to the basement because back then, nothing was open. And Josh came down about 45 minutes later. He's like, Tony, you should see your social media. And I go, is there anything negative? He goes, well, and he's such a realist. He goes, well, no, because who's going to say that to your face and I said, yeah, you're right. So it was really supportive. And, I've had people come up to me at hockey games and they'll say, what did one guy say to me? He said, "It's nice to know that you're part of the AA group." And I said, "Well, actually," and I was gonna correct him. I'm like, "Yep, you're right." And I just went with it because it doesn't matter to me. Like whether you get sober through AA, you get sober through this naked mind, you get sober just because you want to stop drinking, whatever. Like, yeah, yeah, it was scary, but I'm so glad I did it. I think it's a silver bullet, quite frankly. When I'm doing coaching, I talk about it. And I don't say, "Hey," to my clients, "Go post." Like, you have to wanna do it. So, but I do
Yeah.
think it.
You said you think it's a silver bullet? Is that what you
Mhm.
said?
Yeah.
Yeah, and closing the loophole. So is the loophole like moderation? What do you think about that?
Yes, for me it is, because I know to this day, if someone said, "Tony, do you wanna have a glass of wine?" I'd be like, "Well, no, because 'cause I'd rather have the bottle." I just know that about me. What's the point in having 1 glass? That's stupid.
Same.
That's like, why? Why open it? I'd have to record. It's just no, because at my brain, I have rewired my reward center of my brain. There's only so many drink tickets we get in life, and once we cash them all in, we have reward that part or rewired that part of our brain. So, and that's what I did, but I've had to do that. I've had to understand that part, the science part, the brain part, I needed to learn all that, and that's why I spend quite a bit of time reading and listening to podcasts and learning from experts because I need to understand what alcohol is doing to me to continue that motivation to keep going.
Mhm. Yeah. And what do you think for people who are still, they're kind of wanting to find the quote unquote magic pill of moderation? Like it's kind of interesting to me because I'm trying to approach it like cigarettes, where I'm like, you know what? Ideal would be for you to drink not at all or less. But
Mhm,
I'm not gonna like really teach moderation because it's let's drink less or not at all. And I understand, like, it's a process to get there where you can get to that point of acceptance where it's like, "I'm done with drinking, and I'd rather have none than one." I
mhm.
wholeheartedly agree. I'm just curious your thoughts as a coach and how you kind of approach that.
The first thing I say is because people ask me, "Do I believe that moderation exists?" I do. I do believe it, but I believe it if you haven't gone past the line of demarcation. Well, how do you know what the line of demarcation is, Tony? You don't, because you don't I mean, you know it inside, and the reason I believe in moderation is because I live with someone who could take or leave alcohol. He literally could take it or leave it. Josh doesn't care, and I remember when we first started dating, I was like, "How does he do that?" And he looked at me and like, "She doesn't have an off switch." It's like it was a perfect marriage, it ended up being, but do I believe in moderation once that line of demarcation has been crossed? No, but
That's a
that's for the
great.
individual to decide.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is a really good point and a great way to put it. And I remember talking to a friend of mine who's a social worker. He works at inpatient rehab, but he talks about how everyone has a potential ceiling of addiction where they reach their tipping point, if you will, right? And we all have the potential to become addicted to alcohol. Anyone can. Even Josh, we could put him in a room and keep giving him alcohol. He could become addicted. It's just once you reach that ceiling, you can't go back from there. It's your demarcation that you talked about. That's
Yeah.
like thank you for that distinction. Yeah, that's great. Well, what have these 4 years been like for you?
It's a great time to actually reflect on that because it's what one thing that has been interesting is this anniversary, I keep forgetting it's happening. And so I find that to be beautiful because this is just who I am now, right? That identity has fully shifted. So I would say if I were to give you a 30,000 foot answer, my identity has completely shifted. I'm proud of myself. I am what I perceived was a weakness, my greatest weakness. I'm now looking at as the thing I'm most proud of. I am so much different. I mean, I'm still Tony, I still have an edge and I'm still who I am, but I'm so much smarter and wiser,
Mm.
and I'm just better in all areas of life, and that's what I wanted. I mean, I was doing this job when I quit drinking. I mean, I've been here 10 years. I quit drinking for so it's not like I was, not I was high functioning, And so you know what it is though? I have an inner peace, and that was the number one reason I stopped drinking was for peace of mind because I didn't have that before,
Mm. Yeah,
and I've
yeah,
achieved that.
yeah. I think that's so helpful for people to hear because when people are starting out to change their drinking, it's like, I don't want to think about this anymore. Am I going to have to focus so hard on not drinking? Am I going to have to put so much effort into this is exhausting. And like you said, like you just kind of forget like, oh yeah, I'm marking my dates. I'll be 5 years January 1st and it's just it I I'm as I get further and further away from it, I'm like, "Oh, I don't think about it as much." I mean, we do what we do, so it's around all the time, definitely tethered to it, but it's so different. I mean, there is so much freedom and it's just n automatic. It's your new identity, like you said. Like, I don't drink. I'm a
Yeah.
non-drinker. Yeah.
And I like to be really honest about it and not on but real, that it's not like I woke up on October 12th of 2020 and was like, "Yeah, that's it. New identity." No, I was known as Tony Party Time. It was work, like, to get there with me and my beliefs and then all the people around me, like, and not feel like something was wrong with me. So I liked and I think that's why part of the reason my coaching business has been successful because I am not blowing sunshine. I'm like, I mean, I'm caring and I'm non-judgmental, but I'm also like, listen, here's the reality. This shit ain't easy. And it's okay to use willpower. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay not to go to things. It's okay to leave things early. It's okay to change your relationships, your friendships. All that stuff will probably happen. It is not easy. So it one of the things is at 4 and 5 years, it's like, "Oh, man, this is awesome." But to get there, it sometimes isn't easy. At least my journey was. I don't know if you felt that way, but there were moments where I'm like, "This shit's hard."
Yeah, yeah. And I think I had so many attempts at quitting or taking 30-day breaks that I'm grateful for those, as frustrating as they were. They helped me, like, make it stick.
Yes, and that's what I say to clients who and I had one yesterday. It was like, "Tony, when am I gonna get this?" And I'm like, "When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. You'll get there. I have no doubt. Because by the time they get to a coach like me and you, they're ready. It's just there's just a little bit left in the tank. There's one more lesson to be learned. There's one more data point in there. And like you'll get there. I have no doubt. But your expectations and our expectations of ourselves are often high. So it's like, okay, it's usually somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Well, what do you think are, like, the common things that make people most successful when they're quitting drinking?
Yeah. So I think the most I'm okay. So a firm decision is one. I think smaller goals is two. Right? Like, when I started, I put what I called it a Tony timeout because I needed to, like, chill out. Like, I didn't need to say forever. So I was like, "Tony's taking a timeout," and I love alliteration and rhymes. So I'm like, "Let's make it cute, and we're gonna do 30 days." And that's what I committed to. And I literally thought at the end of 30 days that I was gonna go back and I'd be fixed in my mind, and I go back to moderate drinking. But then I was like, "Hmm." So I went October 12th to November 12th, and then I did a 30-day alcohol experiment. Oh, maybe I started that in the middle. And so I lengthened. I lengthened by like 3 weeks. And then I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna do 3 more." And it really was around day 80, which is probably why I ended up if I remember back to that thought sequence, I was like, "I'm done, but if I don't put it out there, I know I'm gonna try and find a loophole." And so I just kept lengthening, and I never to this day say forever. Because that makes me wanna rebel.
Mhm.
And that I mean, that's a long time because 'cause I'm gonna live to 100 in my mind. So, I that's a long time, Deb, to not drink. So, I'm not drinking today. So, I kind of
Yeah.
adopt that, and then I really would say, and this is the hardest part for people, is talking about it. Not just a and start with someone trusted. but start to share because you will be so surprised what other people will share back. It doesn't have to be about alcohol, it could be anything, but I think that's one of the silver bullets. I think there are a few, and that's one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, we need a compassionate witness on our journey, whatever
Love
that
that.
looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you find yourself not like, if you've told one person, like, Josh knew the whole time, obviously he lives with me, but if you get stuck there, it's like, "Okay, why?" Like, allowing yourself to, like, really answer these questions, like, "Why am I not?" And just say, "I'm ashamed, I'm scared. Maybe I feel like I'm gonna lose my job." So I said, "Okay," and I was afraid of that. Well, if they fire me for not drinking, like, is that where I wanna work anyways? No. So I had to adopt that and really be courageous and just and what I found is the things I was afraid of were actually just these beautiful strengths and just to do it. If I feel like not doing something, then I go do it because I
Mhm.
find there's something really good on the other side. Have you ever felt like, "Oh, I don't feel like working out today." And then you go do it anyways, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad I did that." Right? There's a lot of things I just don't feel like doing, and I'm like, "No, you're gonna go do this." And then I'm like, "Wow, I don't regret doing that at all." So,
Yeah. Have you always been that way? Do you feel like you have a lot of confidence and you have this rebel side of you, like something that's pushing you that is special?
this is funny. What others might tell you, and by others, I feel like I mean, Josh should be here. Not that I'm codependent by any stretch of imagination. I'm probably too independent, but he will tell you, and I agree with him. I've always had this chip on my shoulder, and that's what's driven me. And I don't know how I feel about that at times. I feel like it's a negative, so I feel like it's a weakness, but it's given me what I don't know how, but I call it fuck you fuel. And that is what has motivated me a lot. So if someone tells me I can't do something, let's go. I'm gonna climb that mountain. So, I think that's where that comes from. I yeah, I get asked about the confidence a lot, and I'm like, "Well, I hope it doesn't come off as cockiness, because if it does, tell me." But I just think I'm fueled by, just a not feeling good enough and wanting to
Mhm.
prove myself.
Mhm.
And this time in my life has allowed me to really dive into that and say, "You are good enough. You don't have to prove anything." But I think part of it's just innate in me. I'm always looking to accomplish, you know, hard things.
Yeah. I love that. Fuck you fuel.
Told you I love alliteration. Oh, I mean, I love it. It's like, "Oh, this is a good fuel."
Well, I think we can all take some of that with us too. Yeah. We could all use a little bit of that kind of
Mhm,
fuel.
mhm.
And I think it's interesting that you said it comes from not being enough, and then it comes out the way that you express it, and I think you either see that, kind of the rebel Tony you talk about, or you see I'm more of like an accommodator, a people pleaser, like, I'm gonna make everybody comfortable around me because I don't feel enough as well. It's interesting to see how the 2 feelings and I think that's just such a core feeling that, like, to be valued, to know that you are worthy, that you deserve to be here, that you are enough, like, that's such a core value, and it shows up in different ways around us.
Yeah, yeah. It's taken me a long time to and I know where it's rooted, like, I talked about on one podcast, one of mine, I had 2 childhood best friends growing up, and one of them passed away when we were 23, and the other one got in a car accident at 16 and was in a vegetative coma from 16 to 29 when she died of pneumonia. Now, of the 3 of us, I was the black sheep because I was the rule breaker. I was, and that's why they loved me because I was, rebel Tony. But there was a lot stemmed in that at a young age where I was like, I wouldn't call it survivor's guilt because I don't think I was that mature at that time to understand that. But how did they lose their lives at such a young age? And never had children, never married, never and I was able to do that, not once, twice, 3 times, like and so I think a lot of that is rooted in that life experience.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss. That's
Thank you.
what were their names?
Amy and Anna.
Wow. Wow. Well, now you have yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I have some archangels up there, and I really think there are times that I'm like, I don't know how I survived some of my drinking escapades, and I think it's because of those 2. Seriously.
Yeah, yeah, they're probably so proud of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we had kind of talked about before doing the podcast, talking about you being, you and I are the same age. I
Mhm,
graduated in 95. Being in this sandwich stage of life, you
mhm.
have kids that some are in high school, college, and then you're caring for sick family members, parents. How are you managing this? Wow.
Flawed. Flawed. I you know, I one way I'm this is it's tricky, being at this stage of life, and you never know, like, my parents are and they live here in Kalamazoo, so I'm the eldest of 2. My brother lives in South Carolina, but I'm here, and my dad's 81 and my mom's 75. My dad is super, super healthy. My mom, however, has late stage Alzheimer's, and hospice is now involved and in home, along with private nursing kind of supplementing some of this. And so it hard isn't the right word. I don't think it's talked about enough is what because people say Alzheimer's is just terrible, and it is. But and once my mom passes, I think I will be talking more openly about it. Like, what makes it so terrible, right? It's not just that she's not my mom anymore, but it's watching my dad, like, take care of her and what that really means, changing diapers. It is and that's just one thing. It's not being able to leave the house, right? And truly leave the house. It's not being able to pick this person up off the floor because they have fallen and how helpless you can really feel in that. And it's this for me, it's really hard to want to be there and help, but also I love what my not just career, but careers, and that's where I find a lot of value and passion and drive, but I also have 2 children in college and one that's a senior in high school, and while they're independent and living their lives, they need mom too, and never mind that I'm married on top of that. It's just I there's so many spinning plates, and so, I don't know how well I'm doing it, I know need to start with me. I'm just very like, "Okay, Tony time," right? So the morning is where I set the table for the day, and I work out, I eat right, I intermittent fast, like, there's just certain things I'm passionate about. I read, I meditate, and then my day can go, whatever way it's gonna go, as long as I get those few hours in the morning, which requires me to get up early, but then I'm okay. That's how I handle it. And my dad and I have just really good at communicating and supporting one another and calling each other out when we need to, because we both need that. We're a lot alike, so that helps.
Yeah, I'm sure. And was she diagnosed when you were still drinking, or has this been recent?
So she was a school teacher, then she retired about 14 years ago. My dad and I noticed, like, literally within days of her retirement. It was crazy, and I'm like, "You noticing something with mom?" He's like, "Yeah." She did not get diagnosed, she refused to. So this is one of the messages that I will be spreading till the cows come home. Whatever it get diagnosed, like, I know that it's scary, but at least then you can start to do, like, some preventative pieces. There are medications that will slow it down, but my mom was just and she was so combative about it. We used to get in giant fights about it, and because I was like, "You are being selfish, because if we don't get this diagnosed, the people that are gonna be affected are the 2 sitting right here," and she's like, "I don't care." And I'm like, "Cool." So that was hard. That was really, really hard. So it's like and that's one of the things I like talk about, like, when someone doesn't wanna get diagnosed. So, fast forward, she got diagnosed. I had been 9 months sober, 9 months alcohol free, and my dad called. We She had finally gotten down, like, it had progressed enough where she didn't fight it anymore 'cause things were just deteriorating. My first thought wasn't alcohol, though. My first thought was, "Boy, I'd like some Skittles." which was a huge win because for me, I remember that moment. I'm like, "Oh my god, I didn't think that I wanted to drink." Like, that was a big moment for me, and I was sad, but it wasn't a surprise.
Yeah. I think you're right. There's a lot of fear there, and a lot of people I've heard some stories from older people who have been drinking that are fearful, like, "Oh gosh, I have dementia, or is something going on? Is it the drinking? Is it some underlying disorder that I have? What do I do? I'm scared to get diagnosed. What do I do? Yeah, it is fearful, that's for sure."
Yeah, and true to my hit it head on nature, I was like, I mean, anything for my brain health at this point. So I learned a lot about it. Well, the beautiful thing is it ties in wonderfully to the coaching I do because and my mom's dementia is not alcohol induced. I would call her a take it or leave it drinker as well, but I do whatever. So it's just another reason to not go back to drinking because it's certainly not doing your brain any benefits. I mean, this is the CPU. The brain is the CPU of everything. So you want to keep that healthy. So I went and, did the 23andMe to figure out if I the ApoE4 gene and I just am like if I'm going to have any I need to know. So there's 4 genes. I have one of them. I'm considered high risk. 1 out of 4 is not bad. Doesn't I mean, it's not like a true diagnosis, but at least I have an idea of what genetics I have. So everything else I'm preventing through diet, through exercise, through, what I put in or what I don't put into my body and brain.
Yeah, yeah, because it looks like with your business, you help people achieve freedom from all substances. Uh, like you're not are you a coffee drinker? I can't even
So
remember if that stood out.
so the first 2 years I quit drinking, I quit caffeine too. But I have been drinking caffeine for yes, so yes, I drink coffee now. So I was caffeine free for 2 years, and then 2 years ago, I started to kinda go back and forth. Now I'm full octane. So,
Okay.
but I can this is how I measure things. Can I if you said to me, "Tony, you can no longer drink coffee," I'd be like, "Okay." Like, I wouldn't care,
Mhm.
and that's how I determine if I need to, like, chill out on something.
I
So
like that. Yeah, yeah. Well, with your background in, you're getting even more passionate about prevention and helping people reach their fitness and nutrition goals. What's some of your like top advice for someone listening? And maybe they're feeling a little scared about their health, their drinking, their future. What's some like good go-to tips you have?
so one of the things that I do first off, it's you gotta look at how your day is structured. So I would look at that, right? Like, look at what are you already doing that's already fit into your day that you do already. They're called linchpin habits. For me, like exercise is a linchpin habit. So the things that I wanted to get better at, I would build around that habit I'm already doing and habit stack. That's from Atomic Habits from James Clear. So it's just like looking at what do I do well already? Let me celebrate that where do I wanna get better and start to layer that in, and then I track it, because if you gamify something, it makes it fun. So I downloaded this app, it's $2.50 a year. It's called Habit Tracker, and I just pop in there the habits that I wanna give myself an atta girl for at night before I go to bed. And so I put in there like sleep 7 to 8 hours, drink 100 ounces of water, no alcohol. What else do I have in there? I've got read 30 minutes, 10,000 steps a day. Here's some fun ones. No Doritos, no soda, and no Skittles. Now,
Oh,
it doesn't mean
tear falling down my cheek.
no, it doesn't mean that every day I'm not going for perfection other than I don't wanna drink alcohol. That's my there's 2 columns in my life, when I'm willing to fuck with and when I'm not willing to fuck with. I don't fuck with alcohol. I can fuck with Doritos, but not every day. So that's my comfort food. So I just like to track these things and then I look at them and I have goals, like I wanna exercise 80% of the year. So for me, exercise doesn't have to be an hour-long workout, it could be a 30-minute walk, right? So I just gamify it and I make it fun and I set goals and sometimes I can tell, then I look at the emotional side of it, like, boy, I don't feel the greatest. Not like I'm getting sick, but I'm like, "Oh, maybe I've been eating Doritos too many days in a row," or, or whatever. My vitamins are on there, flossing's on there. I don't know. Just things that aren't second nature to me, but I want them to be. So,
Yeah.
there's just ways to track and make it fun.
Well, I think I appreciate that is all, like, doable, and I love to revisit it because you kind of forget. It's like, "Oh, yeah, I could be tracking this. Oh, there are some basic things we could do, removing alcohol, moving your body, drinking lots of water." Like, there's some pretty basic things we can do to take care of ourselves. It doesn't need to be nothing you said was dramatic except for the Doritos and the pop. No,
Specific
I'm kidding.
So, I had to put in there, Deb. So, I used to have no Cool Ranch Doritos, but I told you I love a good loophole. So, I started to eat nacho cheese, and I was like, "There you go with your loopholes, Tony." So, I had to put no Doritos because I will find a loophole, and then I was starting to eat Swedish Fish instead of Skittles. So, then I had to put no Skittles or Swedish Fish.
I love it. I love it. Oh. Well, what are other ways you help, people who are having trouble just getting started? They just feel stuck. Like, how do you help unstuck people?
So I'm a big I read my age every year, and I've been talking about books. I listen to my age every year, which is 46 books this year, 46 podcasts, not my own because that doesn't count. But I'm all about going to the experts. Okay? So find that expert or experts, there's a lot out there, and find what resonates with you or find those pieces and parts that resonate with you. This is where my 6 leadership pillars come in because I was asked one day, "How did you turn the K-wings around?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I just did it." And then I sat down and wrote on a Post-it note one day how I did do it, and 6 leadership pillars came up. And so number 1 is go to the experts, and that was Google for me in this space, but there are so many of us out there now, and we have different voices and different language, and it's like a Rubik's cube, you can make it work for you. Innovate, and that's like that make change to something established. Make mistakes, that's my 3rd leadership pillar, right? Like, it's okay to make mistakes. In the world of alcohol, it's data points, right? But that's the Naked Mind methodology, where it's just about learning. It's not like this all or nothing. Leadership pillar number 4 for me is ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Like, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to ask permission to change anything in your life, and adopting that mindset. Leadership pillar number 5 is macro manage. So it's like holding it loosely, not like suffocating these goals. Like, it's not going to be perfect. That's okay. And then 6, and I think 6 is overlooked so often in everything in life. Have fun. Have fun. Like, we overcomplicate things as adults. We are serious all the time. Like, just have fun. Find
I
ways to,
love
like,
it.
laugh. Yeah. So that's how I get unstuck, and you can apply these leadership pillars to anything, literally anything.
Yeah, those are great. Will you just run through them real quick? Just
Mhm.
the names of them again?
Go to the experts, innovate, make mistakes, ask for forgiveness rather than permission, macro manage, and have fun.
Mm. Yeah, I think that the fun and leaning into that side of life, like the alcohol-free life, dating, sobriety, leaning, like events that you go to, the people you hang out with, all that, like really leaning into what you're gaining, not what you're giving up when you give up drinking. So important.
Yeah, you get so much more back. But it's like I don't have to drink. I get to be alcohol free. Like, that's my attitude. Like, I get to, like, why I spent so much time drinking, I don't know, but I got out of that part of my life when I was supposed to. And I
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah. And here you are now, just
Here I
rocking
am.
it. I love it. Oh, good. Well, how can people find you?
So I can be found. So the coaching, mindfulnesselevated.com. I'm also at ToniWillCoaching.com. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn at Toni Lentini Will. And then on Instagram, I'm Toni Will. I'm not hard to find. KalamazooWings.com too, or kwings.com is a hockey team that I'm the GM for. So, and Women In is a podcast that Deb was a guest on, and that episode is going to be airing this week. So, but it'll be, it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube channel, the whole bits.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for all you're doing. I'm just loving connecting with you the more and more we get to know each other, the more I want to know you. And I hope that you continue to do what you're doing and can't wait to see what your future looks like.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on. I love your podcast. You have just the most fascinating guests on. So I hope the bar stays up there with, what I
Oh,
shared today.
yes. You are great. And maybe that you will come to Boise and see our hockey league
I
play.
The steelheads, they're there. I know. And I'll be sleeping on that futon back there.
That's right. You're well. You know what I was also gonna share with you is, that hockey I went to a Steelheads hockey game was one of the first sober events I went to, and I was kinda nervous about it, and people were drinking, and I could smell the alcohol, but I looked up, and they had a huge ad for Heineken Zero, and I was like, "That's awesome." Right? And
It's
just
so cool.
yeah, and I imagine, like, in your Kalamazoo stadium that you have similar things.
Yes, we do, and because no matter where I go now, I advocate for it, wherever I'm at, whether it's a league-wide thing or, I sit on steering committees for, like, the National Sports Forum. I'm like, "There are those of us who don't drink, and I'd love to make sure there's other options besides soda and water," and they're like, "Absolutely." They just don't think of it because, they're not in that world, and that's okay. So, yeah, I love that Heineken Zero. They're in a lot of arenas, which is that market is growing, the NA segment for sure.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, take care. Take care of
Thanks, Jen.
you and your loved ones. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. Please share and review the show so you can help other people too. I want you to know I'm always here for you, so please reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com, for free resources and help. No matter where you are on your drinking journey, I want to encourage you to just keep practicing, keep going. I promise you are not alone and you are worth it. Every day you practice not drinking is a day you can learn from. I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week, and until then, talk to you next time.